The summer of 1972 brought a warmth that Clara felt deep in her bones. The small coastal village was like a refuge, a place where time seemed to slow down and days stretched out like an endless dream. Clara, at 22, ventured along the narrow, shaded trails that wound through the hills. The sea breeze carried the salty scent of the waves, and the sun danced through the leaves of the trees. There was a sense of freedom she had never experienced before, an anticipation of what was to come. The encounter with Miguel was as unexpected as the laugh that escaped when she stumbled over a treacherous root. In an instant she fell, but felt the strong, steady touch of Miguel, who caught her before she hit the ground. The look they exchanged at that moment was new, filled with surprise and a spark that ignited something in both of them. His hair was touched with gold by the sun, and his deep eyes reflected both curiosity and joy. From that moment, Clara and Miguel became inseparable. They spent their days exploring the village, swimming in the blue sea, and sharing stories under the starry sky. Miguel had a way of speaking that made everything seem more interesting, and Clara, in turn, shared her most intimate thoughts, revealing dreams she kept secret. They walked barefoot on the wet sand, where the waves erased their footprints as if the world conspired to keep each moment just for them. The village lighthouse, with its beam cutting through the darkness, became a symbol of the nights they spent gazing at the horizon. The stars shone brightly, and the sound of the waves gently crashing on the shore served as the soundtrack for their conversations, filled with laughter and comfortable silences. Clara's heart would race every time their eyes met, as if time stopped, suspending them in a moment that felt eternal. There was a sweetness in the way Miguel looked at her, an unspoken promise that this summer would be unforgettable. But like the sun that eventually sets, Clara knew the golden days wouldn't last forever. The talks among friends about returning to university and the opportunities that awaited them beyond the village cast a subtle shadow. The thought of saying goodbye was one they both avoided, but it gradually became inevitable. Clara noticed that, despite the laughter and walks by the sea, Miguel would sometimes fall silent, lost in thought. He spoke about his dreams of studying abroad, about the life he envisioned beyond those shores, and she felt a tightness in her chest. The future, once so distant, now loomed like a powerful wave no one could stop. Even with the end approaching, Clara and Miguel continued to live each day to the fullest, as if they could defy time. Sitting on the sand, her feet touching the cool water and the sunset painting the sky with hues that seemed straight out of a painting, Clara made a silent promise to herself. As long as summer lasted, she would savor every second by Miguel's side. And for an instant she believed that moment could last forever. The summer stretched on like an infinite tapestry, woven with laughter and whispers by the sea. Clara and Miguel explored every corner of the coastal village, as if trying to make each moment eternal. The days began with the golden sun reflecting on the calm waters and ended under a sky so full of stars that it felt like they could touch them. The sense of freedom Clara experienced was unlike anything she had known, a blend of euphoria and peace, as if nothing else mattered but the present. They swam in the sea, challenging the waves with the carefree energy of youth. Clara laughed as the salty water mingled with her hair, and the sound of the waves drowned out any concerns that might arise. Miguel watched her with a serene smile, admiring how every moment with her seemed to intensify everything around him. He challenged her to race along the beach, and the two competed to reach the rocks first. The footprints in the sand were proof that they had been there. But as the waves came in, everything disappeared, a reminder that time was fleeting. During the nights under the star-filled sky, they lay side by side on the grass, looking at the constellations and sharing stories. Miguel spoke passionately about the books he read and his desire to see the world beyond those shores, and Clara listened with fascination. In response, she shared her dream of becoming a writer, of capturing moments like these in pages that would last forever. The silence that sometimes settled between them was as comfortable as their words, a space where their souls spoke without sound. The village was like a world apart, with its colorful houses and residents who seemed to live at their own pace. The merchant who always greeted Clara with a smile, the elderly lady who fed the birds every morning. Everything contributed to the feeling that this was a place where time moved slowly. They walked through narrow alleyways, touching the stone walls that held stories much older than they could imagine. However, time, even in that enchanted village, began to show its signs. Clara noticed how the days felt shorter and how the sunlight changed, casting longer shadows as the summer progressed. Miguel, in moments of silence, would let a distant look escape, as if anticipating something Clara did not want to acknowledge. There was urgency in his gestures, in the way he held her hand a little tighter, as if wanting to imprint that moment in his memory. One afternoon, while they sat in silence watching the sea, Clara felt a lump in her throat. The horizon seemed endless, but for the first time, she felt the finiteness of the moment. She wondered if Miguel felt it too, if he heard the same whisper of time passing, pushing them toward a goodbye neither wanted to face. But he just smiled, and she returned it, deciding to save that melancholy for later. The summer continued, and with it the intensity of their feelings. Every touch of hands, every shared laugh was a silent promise that this moment would be eternal, even when the future called them away. Clara knew she was living something rare, and despite fearing the end, she decided to fully embrace it. And so, under the starry sky with the sea whispering ancient stories, she allowed love to take over completely, without thinking about tomorrow. The end of summer brought a change that Clara and Miguel could no longer ignore. The gentle warmth that once surrounded them now felt tinged with subtle tension. The coastal village, once a refuge, now became a place of farewells. Smiles became rarer, and conversations that once flowed easily now carried prolonged silences, as if they were both trapped in thoughts they dared not share. Clara felt the weight of each passing day, as if time itself was against them. Miguel received letters frequently, and Clara noticed how he read them with an expression that mixed joy and worry. She knew what it meant. The dream Miguel had nurtured since the start of university had finally come true. He had been accepted into a study program abroad, something he had always wanted. But this achievement brought with it an inevitable separation, a distance that threatened to turn those golden days into a distant memory. Clara, in turn, had an opportunity calling to her. An invitation to work on a literary project in a distant city was a chance she never imagined would come so soon in her career. It was the opportunity to bring her dreams to life, to write and be recognized. But what once would have brought only joy now came with a bitter taste. Looking at Miguel, knowing their paths were diverging, felt like an unhealable wound. The last day came with a cooler breeze, as if the world around them knew of the impending farewell. They walked along the beach where the waves lapped gently, and the sky turned shades of orange and purple. Words were few, replaced by glances heavy with emotions they couldn't voice. Miguel took Clara's hand, holding it lightly, as if to memorize the warmth of her skin, the touch that meant so much. They stopped in front of the lighthouse, now casting its light over the sea, a silent guardian of their secrets and unspoken promises. Clara felt her chest tighten, and tears threatened to fall. She wanted to say something, but no words were enough. Miguel looked at her with a mix of sadness and acceptance, as if they both understood that the love they shared could not be erased, but would be tested by time and distance. The goodbye came in a simple gesture, a long, unhurried hug where their hearts beat out of sync, in a final effort to synchronize a memory that would stay with them. The waves licked their feet, and the world seemed to hold its breath for a moment, as if respecting the gravity of that moment. Clara closed her eyes, wishing time would stop, but as they pulled apart, the wind blew, taking with it any illusion that they could stay. They parted without promises, only with the understanding that the future was uncertain. Miguel left the next morning, carrying with him the dreams of a new beginning, while Clara gazed at the horizon one last time before packing her bags. The now silent village seemed to hold the echoes of laughter and footsteps that would not return. And so, under the sky that had witnessed the beginning of everything, Clara and Miguel went their separate ways, hearts marked by longing and the hope that, somehow, destiny might bring them together again. The sound of the waves was now just a distant memory in Clara's mind. Life moved on in different directions, and each of them built their own path, leaving behind that golden summer that once seemed eternal. Clara moved to the big city, where the fast pace and bright lights pushed her forward, distancing her from any trace of the coastal village. Her days were filled with meetings, manuscripts, and lonely nights under the soft glow of a desk lamp. She became a renowned writer, her name featured on book covers and in newspaper reviews. Miguel, for his part, traveled abroad and immersed himself in his studies. Exotic landscapes and grand projects became the backdrop of his new life. He discovered cities where time seemed to stretch between ancient cathedrals and narrow streets full of stories. The years passed in a whirlwind of challenges and achievements, and he too built his career with dedication and talent, becoming a respected architect. Both married, had children, and faced the joys and challenges of adulthood. Clara thought of Miguel only rarely, during literary events where she looked out over a sea of unfamiliar faces. A vague memory of that summer would surface, bringing a fleeting smile and a brief ache in her chest. These were brief glimpses, swallowed up by the noise of a life that insisted on moving forward without pause. Sunday mornings were filled with stacks of correspondence, and coffee was accompanied by lively conversations with friends who filled the silence with laughter and stories. The years shaped Clara. Youth gave way to lines that told stories, wrinkles from old smiles and eyes that held memories of days gone by. Her success did not erase the shadow of longing that occasionally resurfaced like an unexpected visitor. One spring afternoon, while reviewing manuscripts, a breeze swept through the open window, and the sound of a distant song brought back echoes of laughter and footsteps in the sand. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to relive that feeling, but soon shook her head, pushing away the past like a memory that no longer belonged to her. Miguel also felt the relentless passage of time. His travels around the world brought experiences he never imagined, but on quiet nights when the buildings and city lights dimmed, he remembered the gentle glow of the coastal village, the stars reflected in Clara's eyes. It was a memory so old and distant that it felt like it belonged to another life. Her voice, her gestures, her smiles were images that faded like mist. The responsibilities of adult life, projects, children, commitments, filled the space between them and those memories. The summer in the village became like a faded photograph in a forgotten album, kept deep in the heart. Both had moved on, with lives intertwined with victories and losses, meetings and goodbyes. The love that was once vibrant and young now seemed like a subtle mark that time could not completely erase. And so the world kept turning. Clara and Miguel, each in their part of the world, lived their lives, overcame challenges and celebrated victories, never questioning what might have been. When the past appeared, it was like a whisper, an echo that brought a smile of longing but soon disappeared in the current of life that carried them forward. 43 years had passed since that golden summer, and Clara felt the weight of the years in every step. Now a widow and retired, life offered her moments of tranquility and solitude. On an impulse of nostalgia and a desire for renewal, she accepted an invitation from her friends for a trip to Italy. The promise of enchanting landscapes and ancient stories drew her in, a refuge where she could celebrate life despite the scars time had left. Miguel, also retired and carrying a quiet melancholy like an old companion, decided to visit Italy. Fascinated by historical architecture, he planned the trip as a way to reconnect with himself, a journey to rediscover the passion that had driven him all his life. The ancient city, with its majestic ruins and the scent of lemon dancing in the air, seemed to promise a kind of peace he had not felt in years. The day of the meeting came without warning. Amid the hustle and bustle of tourists filling the streets with laughter and excitement, Clara, with a light scarf covering her gray hair, walked among the ruins with her friends, her curious gaze taking in the details of the ancient stones that told stories of empires and conquests. Miguel, standing near a column worn by time, watched the crowd, his thoughts drifting to memories so old they felt like they belonged to another life. And then it happened. Clara's gaze, as it shifted to admire the contours of a statue, met his. Time stood still. It wasn't an explosive encounter but a subtle, overwhelming moment, like the wind carrying fine sand. She froze, her heart beating faster than it had in years. Miguel felt the same, a wave of recognition that made the world around them disappear for a moment. Clara approached slowly, as if fearing the moment might dissipate like an illusion. Miguel's face, now marked by lines of experience and memories, still held the essence of the young man who had caught her on the trail so many years ago. His eyes, still deep and observant, showed surprise and something more, something she felt too, a flame that had never fully extinguished. The first smile was hesitant but soon grew into something more genuine, laden with untold stories and emotions long held back. Clara's friends, sensing the intensity of the moment, stepped back respectfully, leaving them alone in the midst of this chance encounter. The sun bathed the ruins in a soft gold, and the scent of lemon from nearby gardens seemed to carry echoes of a distant summer. Miguel reached out, and Clara took his hand, feeling the familiar warmth she had not felt in so long. No words were needed. They were unnecessary. Time seemed to have come full circle, uniting past and present in a moment they both knew, deep in their hearts, would change everything. The reunion was a reminder that some stories, no matter how interrupted, find a way to continue. And there, under the Italian sky, they understood that destiny, even after so many years, still had its own surprises. The conversation between Clara and Miguel started as a whisper, an exchange of glances that spoke more than any words. Minutes turned into hours, and soon the day gave way to dusk, painting the sky with warm hues that mirrored the whirlwind of emotions surrounding them. Sitting on a stone bench, surrounded by the soft sound of the wind and the murmur of distant voices, they rediscovered the familiarity of a connection that had never truly been lost. Miguel, with his calloused hands and silver hair, looked at Clara as if trying to capture every detail of her face. The lines around her eyes told stories of a life well lived, of laughter, losses, and triumphs. There was something in the way she smiled that brought back the warmth of that distant summer, as if time had never passed. Clara, in turn, observed Miguel and saw not only the man he had become but also the young man who had made her laugh on sunny afternoons and dance under the stars. They shared fragments of their lives, each word filled with nostalgia and surprise. Miguel spoke of the years he spent traveling the world, the cities he saw, and the projects that challenged him. Clara talked about the loneliness that writing sometimes brought, the sleepless nights under the dim light of a lamp, searching for words to capture feelings. Laughter came naturally, interspersed with silences that didn't need to be filled, because they already said so much. As they walked through the cobblestone streets, the scent of flowers and fresh wine filled the air, bringing an unexpected lightness. Clara felt that Miguel's presence awakened something long dormant, the sense of safety, of being seen and understood, made her heart race with an emotion she thought she had lost. Miguel, for his part, felt Clara's presence like a balm, a reminder that time can heal but also preserve, like a vault, feelings that never faded. The shadows of night began to envelop the city, and the yellow lights of the street lamps cast a soft glow on their path. The two sat at a small picturesque cafe, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and low laughter filled the air. Miguel watched Clara as she gazed distractedly at the busy street. For a moment he saw in her the same young woman from decades ago, the one who made him question if happiness could truly be eternal. Time passed quickly, as it always seems to when something precious is at stake. They revisited memories but also created new ones. They talked about their families, how life had shaped them, and the joys and sorrows they faced. It was as if, with each word, they peeled back layers of an unfinished story, one that destiny had given them the chance to revisit. Clara's laughter, sometimes trembling, showed that emotions were at the surface. As night deepened, they walked back to the hotel in silence, their steps in harmony, as if they were young again, discovering the world side by side. The star-filled sky was a witness to a connection that had never faded. Clara felt a new awakening in her heart, and Miguel knew that, in some way, this moment was more than a reunion. It was the rebirth of a story that still had much left to be written. In the days that followed, Clara and Miguel allowed themselves to explore the city like travelers without haste, rediscovering the essence of what they had lost over the years. The cobblestone streets led them to open-air markets where the scent of fresh fruit and spices filled the air. Clara tasted new flavors and Miguel, with a discreet smile, watched each reaction, memorizing every detail like a painter studying his masterpiece. There was a lightness in their conversations, a familiarity that seemed to have survived both time and distance. Miguel was captivated by how Clara still gestured enthusiastically when telling a story, how her eyes sparkled when discovering something new. In an old museum, as they observed a marble sculpture, Clara felt Miguel's hand touch hers gently, and warmth coursed through her body. The connection between them was palpable, woven from old memories and present moments they were creating together. The days passed like a soft breeze, and with each shared step, the past and present intertwined even more. They walked through gardens where multicolored flowers exuded a sweet fragrance, and Clara, in a moment of contemplation, realized that the burden she had carried on her shoulders felt lighter beside Miguel. She felt like the young woman who decades ago ran along the beach without fear of what the future held. Miguel felt the same, a sense of renewal, as if a part of him that had been dormant had finally awakened. As they explored the hidden alleys of the city, where artists painted outdoors and musicians played violins on street corners, Clara and Miguel shared stories and laughter. He spoke of his time in distant cities, of lonely nights in hotels where silence made him remember the sound of the waves and the laughter of a distant summer. Clara, in turn, spoke of the books she wrote, the characters she created, and how they sometimes reflected a love she had never stopped feeling. One afternoon, Miguel took her to a hill that overlooked the entire city. The wind played with Clara's gray hair, and the sun cast a golden light over everything, painting the landscape with a dreamlike tone. Sitting side by side, they didn't need words to understand that what they felt for each other wasn't just an echo of the past but something alive, present, and vibrant. Miguel looked at Clara with an intensity that spoke of promises and second chances, and she, with a gentle smile, let him see what she carried in her heart. The nights were special too. They dined in cozy restaurants where the sound of laughter mixed with the soft music that filled the air. They shared glasses of wine, and each sip seemed to seal a silent pact between them. The sparkle in Clara's eyes was confirmation that she was finally allowing herself to feel something she had kept locked away for years. Miguel, seeing her so radiant, knew that the years they spent apart couldn't extinguish the flame that had always existed between them. When the last night arrived, they both felt that something new and powerful had been born. Clara looked at Miguel under the soft lights of the city and knew that, regardless of what the future held, that moment would be cherished. It was proof that love, when true, can withstand time and be reborn, even when it seemed lost. The final week in Italy brought a bittersweet feeling to Clara and Miguel. On one hand, there was the joy of rediscovery, of a love that reignited like a renewed flame. On the other, there was the weight of the choices they would have to make. Every shared moment, every laugh and touch of hands, came with the reminder that soon they would return to their separate realities. The morning sun cast long shadows over the city, and the summer warmth was already giving way to the cooler autumn breeze, a harbinger of change. Clara walked alongside Miguel through streets filled with history, absorbing every detail. Her heart was torn between the desire to continue living this dream and the awareness that real life awaited them, with its responsibilities and routines. She remembered the lonely nights she spent writing, seeking comfort in fiction that life did not give her. Now, standing beside Miguel, every word she had written seemed meaningless, as if he were the missing piece of her story. Miguel, meanwhile, couldn't ignore the restlessness growing in his chest. He watched Clara as she smiled at a child running across the plaza, and a wave of nostalgia washed over him. He wondered if they were ready to face the changes that would come if they decided to stay together. His life, built over years of work and sacrifice, suddenly felt empty without Clara. He felt an overwhelming urge to hold her hand and never let go, but knew that loving again would require courage. One afternoon, sitting at a cafe under the mild sun, they finally touched on the subject they had been avoiding. The conversation was marked by serious glances and light touches of hands. They talked about the realities waiting for them in their respective homes, about the families and responsibilities they couldn't simply ignore. Clara felt the weight in her heart grow heavier, a pain accompanied by a silent question. Could they rebuild a life that had been separated for so many decades? The cafe around them seemed to fade, the sound of voices turning into a distant hum. Clara thought of the moments they had shared, of how Miguel made the world seem more vibrant. But she also knew that love required sacrifices and difficult decisions. She looked at him, searching his face for the same determination she felt rising within herself. Time was unforgiving, and chances like this rarely came again. Miguel, with his eyes locked on Clara's, felt an impulse he couldn't ignore. He reached out and touched her face with a tenderness that carried years of unspoken feelings. The decision hung between them, ready to be made. They knew that keeping in touch long distance would be possible but hollow. The life they had ahead needed to be more than promises. It needed to be fully lived. The answer came not in words but in a shared smile, full of mutual understanding. They decided that, despite the difficulties, they wouldn't let what they had found be lost again. As the sun began to set, casting the city in golden hues, Clara and Miguel stood and walked together, ready to face the consequences of their choices. The weight of responsibility was still there, but so was a lightness, a renewed hope that they could finally write the next chapter of their lives together. Months had passed since their trip to Italy, and Clara and Miguel kept in constant contact, crossing oceans with messages and calls that warmed their hearts. The conversations, once full of longing, soon turned into plans. The desire to live fully, without the limitations that had kept them apart for so long, became a certainty. And so, on a sunny spring day, Miguel asked Clara to return to Italy, this time for an occasion that would change their lives forever. Tuscany welcomed them with rolling fields of olive trees and vineyards stretching to the horizon. Clara, dressed in a simple white linen dress that fluttered in the breeze, felt a serene joy growing in her chest. The guests were few, only close friends and family who would witness not just a wedding but the celebration of a love that had defied time and fate. The sun cast a golden glow over everything, as if the sky itself wanted to bless the moment. Miguel, dressed elegantly with a smile that reflected a rediscovered youth, waited for Clara under an arch of wildflowers. The scent of lavender and roses mingled with the distant song of birds, creating a magical atmosphere that seemed like a dream. Clara walked towards him with calm steps, her heart pounding with happiness. In her eyes, the mix of tears and laughter showed that each step represented a victory over the years they had been apart. Miguel watched her with a look filled with memories and promises, as if each moment shared held the intimacy of a lifetime. The officiant's voice rose gently, echoing among the hills as their vows were exchanged. The vows were more than words. They were declarations of lives lived apart, but always guided by an invisible flame that led them back to each other. Clara promised Miguel that every day together would be celebrated as if it were the first, and he, with tears in his eyes, assured her that he would never let time separate them again. The sound of applause and laughter surrounded them as their kiss sealed the commitment, a gesture that carried decades of unspoken love. The celebration took place under the open sky, with tables decorated with olive branches and candles casting a soft glow. The scent of local wine mingled with the aroma of fresh herbs, and the laughter of friends resonated like music. Clara and Miguel danced under the twinkling string lights, moving in harmony that came from years of waiting. Each step felt like an affirmation that they had found what destiny had kept for them. At the end of the night, as the sky darkened and stars began to appear, Clara looked at Miguel and felt a deep peace. The wind blew lightly, making the candles' flames flicker, and the distant sound of soft music filled the air. Miguel's gaze met hers, and in a silence filled with meaning, they knew they had arrived where they were always meant to be. There, under the starlit Tuscan sky, the love that had endured time and trials blossomed, strong and eternal. The story of Clara and Miguel is a powerful reminder that time, as relentless as it may be, does not erase true emotions. Sometimes life takes us on unexpected paths where dreams are lost and reunions seem impossible. But as we have seen, love has a unique way of finding its way, even after decades and challenges. Clara and Miguel show us that it's never too late to follow your heart, to seek happiness, and to believe that fate, with all its twists and turns, can surprise us when we least expect it. If this story touched your heart, and you want to keep following other moving narratives that explore the strength of love and resilience, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell to receive updates whenever a new video is posted, and share this video with friends and family. This way, more people can be inspired by stories that show that true love can overcome any obstacle. Thank you for watching and for being part of this journey with us.